It stops switching, it's on. There we are.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody back to this penultimate session of today's submissions. There'll be one to do after dinner tonight. My name is John Falloon and I will be chairing this session. First of all, I'd like to welcome Peter Reveley, who is going to submit first in this session. The floor is yours, Peter.
Good, I think that's all on. Yep, okay, thank you. I'll start off with the submission process. Pretty disappointed. The piece you sent out to everybody was late. There was only the Hectory meeting still to go. You got people at Methven and Mount Somers, solely because the people of that district put something, there was something going on. So you, as a council, I think you put that out. And the issues which you steered people towards, the water meters and the elderly person's housing, I think are two very lightweight issues in a budget that's got now a lot more money in it. So there's whole lots of things in there you could have steered to. I'll touch on one down further, some roading and a few other things. But I was disappointed, and it wasn't easy to get off the website. I'll start with this, the water meters, strategic meters placed along the street. Farmers have strategic meters. You tell exactly what it is. It's programmed onto a computer. Farmers have done this for a long time. It comes onto a computer. It'll alert you if you do it using too much. It goes all. You've got your yearly allocations. You could say, right, at the end of one particular street, this is what it would be. You need X amount of water, and all it would take is somebody to go through any of the anomalies in it. So it'd be so easy, rather than somebody go around every bloody place to find where it was, and if it was on the street, you'd still be guessing. So pretty disappointed that was. Yeah, the system that works remotely, it goes all the time. And the other thing is, I'm just not sure whether you shouldn't be auditing your contractors, because very few of the public actually use your contractor. Because if they have, they don't have them the second time. So I'd like to think that you start auditing just a little bit better. Right, elderly person's housing. Yeah, you don't need to look at the papers, just write things down, because I'll tell you where you need to be. The elderly person's housing. This is just a change to the general rate, another small issue, but it should have been a UAGC. Should have been. But because you're fully up with the UAGC, you can't. So if you'd have charged the stadium, people that use the stadium, a lot closer to what it's costing to run that stadium, you would have had some money from that. So I believe the council took the easy way out and used the general rate. The roading, it was almost hidden to find out what was in the roading. There was a little piece there. Probably what I want to say is that our road, never water on it. It's just had the edges taken off it. They were like that before. They're like that now, right to the tar seal. And the edge is starting to break in 3 weeks' time. After 3 weeks, we're starting to get edge break, and that whole road was mowed probably 10 times by the farmers. It was never anything but mowed. So it's a beautiful roadside which has been mucked up, but now you've taken the edge off it. And if somebody had come and fixed about a dozen holes that are in that road, I think everyone would be appreciative. But everyone's quite angry that they've wrecked the road. We'll probably be able to roll the piece to get it so we can mow it again, but you didn't fix the damned holes. And you go a wee bit further, at least we are getting 4 days out of the holes with your new contractors. You seem to be patting yourselves on the back a wee bit, the great contractors. We're getting 4 days rather than 4 hours, or four days and perhaps a week, but they're still getting holes where the patches are still going in, so they've still got a problem there. We'll drop down to the bridge. It's taken a very long time to get the business case out. I was on council when Shane Jones gave us some of that money. I'm not sure whether you're going to try and keep it secret or what it is, but as you know, I'm not in favour of where the bridge goes through the east. So I think it's a disappointment that we've waited this long, but certainly we probably won't have to worry too much, because I don't think the government's got any money to build a bridge in Ashburton. But so it's. Yeah, so the bridge, and I'll just go a wee bit further with the bridge. Tynwell wouldn't need a bridge if you put 2 decent damn roundabouts there. You can drive from, once you get out of Ashburton, you go damn near to Auckland and go around roundabouts and good lights with good roads. Ashburton would be the same. You've got a couple of little narrow spots, and Tynwell, the lights on Agnes Street will be an embarrassment, I believe. You still want to alleviate the problem of Graham's Road and Shingle and all the rest of it. life's still got to go on, and to bring big trucks with shingle back through Agnes Street and around through there. I'm not sure which of the wee side streets you're going to bring them down, Grove Street or the others. So a couple of good roundabouts, plenty of grass there, plenty of room, and you could have 90% built without upsetting the traffic. Right, down to my old one, the stock water. This really upsets me. 2.5 staff, and just have a look at when you get back to your main budget. Just see what you've put on there, because the very high cost of management is really unreal. 2.5 staff aren't too bad at 250,000, but your management is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not sure what you're going to use the spare cash for, because there's nothing in there that tells me what you're actually going to use it for. So if you're quite proud of that, I'm just not sure what information you've got. I'll carry down a bit further. And the number of people that say they came through here when we had the last lot of submissions wanting water, I've done quite a bit of digging on that. Went back again, and over half the ones I knew actually had tanks hooked up to BCI. Actually had them when they were actually in this building, and some of them soon afterwards. So I'm just wondering, has the staff gone out and checked those people whether they still need water? We're taking water from above Mount Somers and putting one lot's ending up going into an ECAN drain down at Boundary Road. I'm trying to find the person that actually needs it and all that straight. So there's some things. So I would like to see rather than $1.5 million be spent on some fish screens, we'd give that money straight directly to RDR, who supply water, and give the fish screens and a decent allocation of water, and they could control it all. There's not many places now that there's not a pipe. You start right at the top of Multicultural, it goes into all the Stavely. So we used to say everyone above the irrigation ditch hasn't got it. That's not correct now. Water's pumped up in all those places. So there's not many places now that haven't got either a farm pond or a duck pond or something they want the water for. So you really need to look at that, because this is totally unaffordable. And I'll just jump down to the last little piece. I'm not sure when you're talking to the Maoris or anybody else wanting an ecological study done that anyone would ever want to eat anything that come out of those creeks. My testing is still showing what's actually killing sheep this year. So I've got a few more sheep. So when there is water in the race, it's actually killing the sheep. If when it comes down, we haven't known it's arrived, which it'll arrive and be there for one day. If you don't happen to see it arrive, you can guarantee you're going to lose some sheep. And that's the sort of water that when you're negotiating with these people, say, where do we want the water? In a man-made stock water race, or do we want it back in the river? This is surface water, which is highly, highly valuable, and it's pure. The water in the river is good, but what we do is upset it, and say there's some of the stock races going into the ground, highly polluted, and into ECAN drain. So I really want to see you get really set out to try and close it, and not live on some of the old information you have, because some of the old information we desperately need water is incorrect. If the staff, there's not that many left, if the staff were to drop into some of those places and see ECAN, there was one probably less than a month ago, so said, well, I don't know, the pipe goes through, would I ever get it? I says, ring BCI. They said, well, you've got a breather there, have you got a tank? No. Well, he said, get a tank and we'll hook it up tomorrow. So BCI are prepared to put water onto people's places for a limited amount of stock water and house water immediately. And at this stage, they haven't actually charged anyone that I know, the ones I know of. So I think if we've got more homework out there, and you could close that, because I don't think you can continue to service it $1.5 million, plus some of the debt you've probably still got sitting there on what's going on. So that's me done.
Thank you, Peter.
Compliments all the way through.
Here, Neil.
I missed those compliments, but I'm sure they're in there somewhere. Welcome, Peter. You talked about the stadium, put the charges up. We tried to put the charges up a couple of years ago, and we got big kickback. We only could talk about lifting them 50 cents a week for a person to play netball, and we got big kickback. We only recover about a third of the cost of running that facility now. So if we doubled it to 2/3, council would be paying a third. The ratepayers a third, 2/3. The users 2/3. I think they would really kick up. You comment on that? And I've got two more questions.
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. Those that are using it know the costs. being a farmer, Neil, you'll see the rates we're paying. There'll be very few places, by the time you pay the council rates and the ECAN rates, that are under go down to 10,000 this year on a small place. The rates, but I see when this building was being built and we consulted on it, it wasn't going to cost anywhere near what it is costing the general ratepayer. It was going to be a UAGC, and it was going to be charged, and so it wasn't going to have to be topped up to the extent you are.
Okay, thanks. And the road you talked about, which is rigged, which road is it?
One up past my place, runs from Thompson's Track to Mount Summers.
Does it have a name?
Tramway Road.
Tramway, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you put that water in the stock water in the RDR, is there any room to put it in the RDR, or is the RDR full?
I don't know, because they would be taking that would be allocated to the various ponds which go to the nearly all got ponds with them now.
When the RDR is only so big and it's carrying 30.5 cubics now, how can you put another cubic in it because it's full?
My understanding of talking to the various people that are involved, most of them, there's only one at Methven that hasn't got a small inland the storage pond that does that.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is if you don't use this a take of the RDR of the Ashburton District Councils and you put it on the RDR take coming out of the Rangitata division race is full of irrigation water, generation water, and the other stock water that's in it. You can't squeeze any more in it, I don't believe.
That's not correct. You probably haven't been up that way for a while. They've just taken the edges off there, and there's probably room for about 37 cubics in there now. They've taken the sand off all the way through and widened the banks. Now they're not things. So with I think there's 34 in there today, and it's probably down what 18 inches from capacity where it used to go under the bridge.
We'll agree to disagree, I think. But anyway, thanks.
Councillors McMillan?
Thank you. Hi Pete, how are you? Can you just clarify, you said something right at the start and I didn't quite understand what you meant. You said we needed to audit our contractor because very few people use it. What were you talking about there?
ACL, people who've had ACL don't have them back again, and I'm not sure the quality. Certainly some of the stuff I've seen when I was on council, and I presume it's still going on, is some pretty sloppy pipe work.
Okay,
You don't see stockers going back having to have a second crack at there or Rooney's. They seem to be able to get it right the first time. So I think it's a bit same as the roads. I think an auditor out there watching what's going on and a bit more would be pretty good value.
Thank you, Peter, for your submission, and we'll get back to you. Our next submitter is Hospitality New Zealand, who's represented by Peter Morrison.
Peter's back
And
home
it's
in
on
Christchurch.
page 291.
Sorry?
Page 291 as far as the councillors are
Peter's
concerned.
back in Christchurch, and I'm the Vice President, so David Denbar, so I've come along to represent.
Welcome.
All right? We're 5 minutes late, so I'll try and make it up. So through the chair, I presume that the submission's been read and understood by everyone present?
Yes.
Thank you. So I've heard this time and time again over the years to do with rates. I've presented here at the council on matters of the PAN rates, PAN tax, water rates and plain old rates. Quite enjoy the challenge, and sometimes we get somewhere and sometimes we don't, but hopefully over the 2 days you get enough information to make an informed decision. As a commercial operator, it's very easy for the council to collect rates, etc. from us. I remember once bringing up about hairdressers and stuff operating from home. The mayor at that time simply asked me, "Will you give us the list and we'll deal with it?" That was putting me in a rock and a hard place. As you know, most people in Methven know each other pretty well. But it is a hard situation at the moment. It goes into the too hard bus that collect off if you were trying to collect off like the Airbnbs and the back Booker Batch, Freedom Campers, etc. And last year we got the stats from New Zealand estimated it was in 2018 that there was 550 to 700 million of income come into those 3 areas. That's quite a lot of money if you guys were allowed your share of the rate on that area. As you know, there was a lot of Airbnb. There were a lot more freedom campers, but now that New Zealanders have started buying up camper vans everywhere, left, right and centre, I've been talking to the local camping manager in Methven, and he informed me that there are some new rules coming out, and we hope that they prevail, because it would mean that pretty much any area that was allowed for camping will have to supply a full bathroom facility, simply because a lot of those ones only have 20 to 30 litres of grey water storage, and as we all know, that's not very much after a shower and doing the dishes. Just a wee niggle from hospitality, I suppose. It was a shame that the Ashburton Council didn't consider refunding PAN tax for the accommodation and hospitality sector during the close and restrictions made during COVID-19. Some people all up didn't have anyone on their premises for 3 months. Just wondering, looking at your expenditure and for the Methven area, and just wondering why we have to try and squeeze so many major and expensive tasks in such a short time. If that was our business or any business people, you'd have to look at like extending that time frame to complete all those. But it just seems there are some quite big ticket items there, and I've been reading up all the information all day, and it's, yes, you do answer some, but I just want you guys to see what you think about that. Could it be spread over 6 years instead of three to 4? Commercial and householders don't actually have a large pot of money to prop up government and councils, so they look good to the voters. Just a thought. Has the council spent enough time on going through your operating expenditure and trimming costs in every which way you can, as any good business and household has to do today? That's something that we look on a 2-monthly pretty much review all our incoming expenditure accounts, and we look at any way that we can trim them slightly. A question that I got asked to ask was, what is the cost to split Methven Community Board, the funding for the Methven Community Board, between the cost of the actual direct cost to the board in Methven and the council staff that assist that board? A couple of people would like to know the answer to that. And also, like, so if you have a beer section that's not hooked up to any of your services currently, but you're paying rates on it, does that mean if it's worth 300,000, will that have a $450 increase at the 15%? Because that's what it is. It's 15.2 if it's only 300,000. Is that right? Anyone?
Someone answer that?
We don't rate on the increase is not on the value of the property, it's on the value of your rate bill. So if you paid $2,000 in rates last year, 15% on top of that, not the capital value of your section.
Right. So when I went, there was a page there and it had starting at 200,000, 200,000, 300, 400, and it had a different percentage for the rates. Is that right?
The other thing to remember is it is just an average, so it's going to affect each ratepayer separately.
Yep. Yeah, I realise it's an average.
Yeah.
But it was just that one thing of a beer section that you'll click the ticket when that person decides to build on it. But currently that would rise by 15%, wouldn't it? That's what it says in the information. No?
On average.
Right. Okay. And just because we enjoyed seeing the new water system going on the main road. Right, so all our old piping was 100 mils and we're putting new stuff at 150. Is there any sort of guideline how long you think that 150 will stay viable before it has to be replaced?
I'm not an engineer.
A good answer, but is there an engineer here that could answer that?
We'll make a note of the question and get back.
The only reason why I inquired about that was when the second pipe was put in from Pulling Hill to our tank, it was talked about that already that was not sufficient for the growth of methane at the time. That's all. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Thank you. Any councillors have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Councillor Liz McMillan?
Hi Trev, thank you for coming in. I just have a question on the Fraden campers.
Yep.
And we had someone come in this morning to speak to us, and they thought that a ban on freedom campers for a couple of months over winter would be a good idea to get people to actually use the campgrounds and come in and spend a bit of money in the different towns. Do you think that would be a good idea, or do you think Fraden camping is not a problem at the moment?
Well, I mentioned something in there, so I do see it as a slight problem, because there are a lot of vans out there that, you know, one mention is once you make the bed up, then you can't use the toilet, so it's not 100% self-contained, is it? And if you only got storage of that much grey water, where's the rest going at night time?
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks. My question is, did you realise that a couple of years ago commercial rates dropped actually 15% in this district? We took the cost of the domain off. Commercial ratepayers were paying an increased levy for urban infrastructure, including Methven, Mackay and Ashburton.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually got a 15% decrease. So you're actually better off than you were 2 or 3 years ago. So when you say commercial are paying an unfair lot, I think they're actually doing pretty reasonable in this district compared to general ratepayers.
So the introduction of supply of fresh water, the cost of that certainly put the rates back up over what they were prior to that decrease. I don't mind showing a bill from the Brown Pub what it costs for a year, and it's not a cup of tea.
One last question, Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to ask your opinion on this. Before we ban freedom camping, do you think the camping grounds need to revamp and look at themselves now that we've got all these camper vans on the road, that they need to look at their cost structures and altering it, what they are offering towards this group of people? Because traditionally they're focused on families staying there with all the facilities, and these guys are on the road and it's only a one-night stop. Mm-hmm. And we should be looking at that. So they do stop and bring value to our district.
Well, aren't the camping grounds restricted with their facilities, how many people they can actually have staying or not? I thought there's a limit to what they can have.
I don't know, but maybe it's a whole big area that needs
something
to
worth
be
looking at, yes, because you wouldn't want them to be oversupplied with people and undersupplied with facilities. Yeah. But there is someone that goes around checking on camping grounds. One member of the council staff.
Thank you, Mr. Denbars, for submitting on behalf of Hospitality.
Thank you very much.
And we will get back to you.
Yeah.
Next one is Murray Anderson. Murray, the floor is yours. And that is page 16.
Would you put them out to members from could I put some Peter, they've already got No, I meant the people I'm seeing my submission today around the page. Is that right? There's two of them, Peter. 10 minutes from now.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Murray.
Is that my submission? Thank you, Mr Chairman, Mayor, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity. Just seeing we're having problems with bridges, I thought you, Councillor Caroline would know this bridge very well. It was the first of 40 that we built in a 10-year period. It must have been easier in those days. From day one, you have my submission to the council with you. Thank you. And I've got another couple of pages. I will not be reading it all, but I'd appreciate if you would read it in your spare time. So, but starting off from day one, the council, this has been a council project, council driven. It certainly has not been community project, just the opposite. The community from day one has not been listened to. Forward planning is about achieving outcomes for long-term benefits. We spend too much time window dressing. I've served on 3 committees. I'll just skip down here. But the problem is that if the council is not supportive of a project, then the community is stymied. It has nowhere to go. Now, the New Zealand highway network, and we've certainly seen changes and name changes over the years, and there's quite a bit here, and I express extreme importance on this issue, because we must understand fully the legislation and the duties and the opportunities that you can use within that legislation. So I'll move down further. Even in China, I found surprisingly that the system worked very similar to our legislative system here. Here, down to the NZTA. On this project, NZT have sat quietly in the background while the council and its advisors saves and pays. It is totally the wrong way round. Our future communities deserve better. Just another example, I was in our sister city, Devon, a number of years ago, East Street, West Street, some of you all know all these issues, but not a big town, but the importance of the motorway just within 1 to 2 k's away from the town. 6-lane highway, and unless I was doing over 80 mile an hour, I had to move into the slow lane. So that's 130 k. But the next few days I spent in Cornwall with a friend, and he said to me, New Zealand were very lucky that they did not have Cornwall engineers to lay out their towns and roading network. And if you've been to Cornwall, you'll understand what I'm referring to. The moral of the story is move forward with planning for the future. It can be so easy. Do not take an irreversible step backwards. For 10 years I've listened to some of the rubbish about the present bridge, that the bridge is at risk. We must build well away from the present one, scaring the community about risk and cost if it blows out. My answer to this is take your Rakaia and Rangitata bridges are a greater risk than Ashburton? My answer again is replace the present bridge, which you have in the earlier submission, which is 88 years old, not up to present day standards. Replace it with, it's quite simple, a 4-lane modern highway bridge. Our neighbour to the north, Waimakariri, 3 bridges, 8 lanes, and the railway bridge of 2 as well. The Ashburton is just a puff in comparison with this river. I usually refer to our neighbours, but I'll just mention the Palmerston North Council, district, city, a progressive city, and I witnessed in the late 1950s when they took the rail out of their city, and more recently their lovely 4-lane bridges. Cambridge, a lovely district, but a town that had a bad name for traffic congestion until 15-20 years ago when they got their 4-lane highway. Similar town, slightly smaller than Ashburton, but many similar circumstances. But 3 to 4 years ago, a totally new 4-lane highway, I think they call it the Great Western Expressway, not one residential home in its path because the corridor had been designated, and importantly it was within 1k of their 4-lane highway through their town. The public meeting was held 10 years, a month ago, first for 10 years. I assure the council that that could have been filled 2 or 3 times over if people believed that the council would take this serious. That is the feedback that I continually receive. Councillor, I certainly would not apologise for expressing passion. I suggest you read your submission of 2018 to the LTP to refresh your memory. Many towns in New Zealand would love to have the entrance that we have to our town, both north and south. The town is 6 k's in length, a total of 67 homes, compared with several hundred on the proposed route. There is room for a 4-lane highway, and the corridor can be improved to meet the increased needs in the future. The proposed route is Mickey Mouse. In fact, it's worse than that, it's archaic. And I'm saddened by this whole affair. I never thought it would come to this. The handful that drove us from the start are well gone from our town. They took the easy way out. Get the traffic away. They should have considered the people. The people. With a new council and new CEO, I was hopeful a fresh look at the project may be considered. Can I assume, Mr Mayor, that you will support a 4-lane highway through Rakaia, your hometown? This is what the rest of New Zealand is doing, now or in the future. I would suggest, down to Timaru now, they're doing this now or in the future, except Ashburton. Finally, you must get back on track, demonstrate some commitment, demonstrate some forward planning. This is Ashburton District. We should be leading, not stepping back. You must build capacity. We must build capacity. And I'll say it again. We must build a quality highway through our town. Nobody outside district will worry about Ashburton. The alternative, councillors, is for our town is not good. Ashburton will have a second grade highway. What it's got now, this is the opportunity, carrying 25,000 vehicles over a second grade bridge. A third grade highway through our prime residential area, travelling on our ratepayers owned and funded network. Also 25,000 vehicles per day in the future. And council, where to then? You're not planning. Ashburton ratepayers will forever pay a toll through our rates, while everyone from outside our district will travel through freely. Ashburton, you have one chance. Take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Do any councillors have any quick questions? Mr Mayor.
Just one, Murray, thanks for your submission. What's your thoughts on the bypass, which some people talk about, around the town?
Well, Mr Mayor, if council would listen to my submissions over the years, and my submissions for 10 years in the media, surely you know my opinion on that. So that's my last sentence. You have one last chance. Take it. Where do you go when you fill these two bridges up? Because your advisors, your consultants told you that 10 years ago, that we cannot just have another bridge. You've got to, and I can give you the figures. It's so easy. It's like electricity in New Zealand. You know you can plan. You know what the figures are going to be in 20 years' time, approximately, because it's 2 to 3% every year. So the figures are there. You've got it. By the time you build it, it'll be half full for a start. So where are you going to go? I've tried to, but it's going to, I've said each time, it will get harder every year you leave it. You've just got another development starting on our boundary now. It's been coming for years. You've got a plan, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Thank you for your submission, Murray. At that public meeting a month ago, or whenever it was, at the intermediate school, I thought I heard you say that the council of the day instructed the consultants to find a way to take local traffic off the main road bridge. Did I hear you correctly?
No, councillor, and it was reported wrong in the paper that it was 202. The district council went down the step of planning. It was 206, the new council. In 202, February I think it was, the memory's not as good as it used to be, it was urgent business on council that day to take immediate action on ensuring that the corridor through would be sufficiently for the future needs of this town, and especially stated for lane highway through our town. That was immediate, and I found out in 2010, apparently, Mr Mayor, and I've spoken to you about this, it's never been enacted, and that was urgent business. So, I moved it from the chair myself, if you're wondering.
So a supplementary question, if I may. So what you're saying is that at that meeting at the intermediate school, you did not say that the council of the day instructed the consultants to find a way to remove local traffic off the main road bridge?
No, I did not, and we didn't. We dealt with consultants, but very seldom, and mainly it was our decisions at that stage.
Thank you.
We certainly did not instruct any consultant. The engineers, which you expect of the council then, would have been to transmit that immediate message through to Transit New Zealand, as it was at that stage.
Thank you, Murray, for your submissions, and we'll get back to you after we've deliberated.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Murray. In 2011 or 10, we sat in the Tynwald Hall and heard Mr. Rice from NZTA tell us that we would need another bridge, a bypass bridge,
Mr. Rice, Bill
in
Rice.
20 or 30 years, which is now 10 or 20 years. So where would you envisage that bridge would go?
Councillor, I've told people, I've said in the paper where it's got to be a bypass. And I've said it time and time again. Rather than stating it, I'll state if you so wish. But it has to be close to our town. You'll not get it through the system if you go too far out. But it must be. This is the centre of the South Island. We have growth to the north, we have growth to the south. Surely Ashburton can fly the flag rather than become known as the district with the poor reputation of getting through it, through the town. Did that answer the question or not?
That'll do. Thank you.
But
As I said before, thank you, Murray. Sorry to Councillor Rawlinson.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask you, you may, I put in another 10 submissions, I don't expect another, but I'd appreciate 10 minutes on those submissions. I understand you may have a spare slot after your meal this evening, so perhaps you may take that into consideration.
Yes, we do, but we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alistair Argyle. And you'll find Alistair's submission on page 40. He's got a few traffic issues.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address the submissions that I have made, and I'll just go through and comment on one or two aspects of each of the four of them. The first one, as you'll be aware, relates to the corner just along the road, and any of you who have travelled south on Park Street will, if you've encountered SUVs parked on Havelock Street around the corner, if there's 2 or 3 of them, it is impossible to see vehicles that are coming up Havelock Street heading in a westerly direction. One has to be a good 4 or 5 feet or a couple of metres into the intersection before one can see to the left, and it is a real hazard for particularly road users and also for children. Interestingly, outside the dentistry on Park Street, that is, no parking is permitted there, and one wonders why it is not possible to perhaps sacrifice 1, maybe 2 of the car parks on Havelock Street to cure that problem. Secondly, in relation to Will Street, and unfortunately this probably flows on from what the previous Mayor was commenting in relation to the problems over the bridge, we are noticing increasingly that when there is some backlog of vehicles, then trucks in particular, we notice, are turning into Wills Street off West Street and heading up there, because for most of that street there are no giveways, and it's quite straightforward to travel up there, at least until Grigg Street. Quite often those vehicles will head right through to Oak Grove and then turn right, travelling along to Racecourse Road. But I learned at the most enjoyable function on Saturday evening that was the college reunion, that it's now quite common also for vehicles to turn left into Greg Street and head along there and then eventually link up with River Terrace and thence down to Moore Street. Those vehicles, particularly when they are travelling along Will Street close to the duck pond, are quite a traffic hazard as well. In relation to the Freedom Camping one, obviously that links into one of the earlier submissions as well. Just to put that into context, it's not uncommon for me to be walking along West Street 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday morning. There are what would be best described as pretty scruffy looking vans parked outside the library, obviously because it's easy to get the free internet access. There is no way in the world that those are self-contained camper vans, despite the fact that they are very proud to brandish a sticker on the back that they can purchase for $9.99 and stick on the back of their van and pretend that they are so self-contained. And it's not uncommon for similar vehicles to be parked in Will Street and Cameron Street overnight as well. Not only do they leave certain matter, but they also leave anything else they wish to discard there. And my final submission relates to the question of, unfortunately, my typist, that is to say my wife, referred to air brakes, whereas in fact I was meaning to refer to exhaust brakes, which, to quote from Land Transport New Zealand's Traffic Note 19, published in April 2005, with which you'll all be familiar, engine brakes can produce a very distinctive impulsive noise when activated, which can annoy residents, particularly in towns. That particular traffic note not only provides legal opinion on engine brake restrictions, but describes the sign recommended to reduce unjustified use. In terms of the particular Land Transport Rule, Traffic Control Devices 2004, a sign recommending non-use of engine brakes should be in a form which simply says, heavy vehicles, please no engine braking for the next whatever number of kilometres is relevant. For those of us who have been truck drivers, one ought not to need to use exhaust or engine brakes on flat road. They are normally used on downward roads to slow down the vehicle. One suspects that those who are using them in the town are doing so because they are just big boys who are showing off. But those are my additional comments in relation to the submissions themselves.
Thank you, Alistair. Do any councillors have any questions? Just Mayor?
Just one question, thanks for your submission, Alistair. Just on Park Street, Havelock Street, I think it's a give way sign there now. Would a stop sign sort the problem, or do you think you need to lose two parks?
I think the stop sign might actually exacerbate the problem, because those who were using Havelock Street would just simply go up there without expecting to encounter any vehicles. And if someone had made a mistake, an error of judgment, because they'd got out into the intersection and hadn't seen the vehicle heading up Havelock Street, then someone might be travelling a little too quickly.
Supplementary, has there been any accidents there that you're aware of?
I know there have been some very close calls. I'm not familiar with whether there have been any accidents, but I can't help you there, sorry.
Thank you, Alistair. The only comment I'd make, I guess the trucks now might be a bit bigger than what you drove.
Ever so slightly, yes.
But thank you for your submission.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Our next submitter is Fraser Mckenzie, and you'll find his submission on page 377. Fraser, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, I'm in relation to the proposed increases water rates for the Multicultural water scheme. basically, it's over the next 10 years, we're looking at four times increase in the current rates. The proposal is to put a $3.5 million treatment plant at the headwaters of a water scheme for approximately 40 houses. It's a horrendous bill. It's a stock and household water scheme. Probably 95% of it's drunk by stock, where we 5% by the 40 houses. I just felt I had to speak about this, or I had to make a submission. I realise that the councils are all over New Zealand are running scared from the water issue thing, but that's a horrendous bill. Like over the next 10 years, my total rate bill for 100 hectares in one house is going to be 144,000. It's under the proposal. I realise it's an expensive water scheme. There's a lot of maintenance. It's 60 years old, but treating the water at the headwater does not guarantee the water coming out of a tap is clean, because there's contamination. The way the scheme is set, it's just basically there's 6 main lines running down through the district, and troughs and houses just come off those lines. Cross-contamination is quite a big issue. I'd propose putting treatment plants at each house, or as I say in the submissions, if you look at the map in Montalto, houses tend to be in sort of clusters to a certain extent. One treatment plant can do 3 or 4 houses. But yeah, even $10,000 per house, it's still only 400,000, isn't it? As opposed to $3.5 million. I realise that it's a compliance thing about testing water, and you're only testing one site as opposed to testing 40 sites. I don't know how often the government insists that the water is tested, but that's just a horrendous bill to put onto 40 houses.
Thank you, Fraser. Do any councillors have any questions? Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just refresh my memory of those figures you gave me? I just was it 140,000 over the next how many years or something?
Currently, interesting enough, we got an email signed by the mayor, so it's obviously the council think it's a reasonably serious issue for the mayor to be signing a letter. The actual rates on the water scheme at the moment, I'm paying $33 per unit, which is per hectare. I've got 114 hectares on the scheme, and there's an annual charge of $1,000.70. So this year, my water rates are $4,946. Now that over the next 10 years, that's tiered up slightly. It's on a steep climb. But in 10 years, 2030 to 2031, the unit rate per hectare is $123, and the annual charge is $3,777, which comes just on $18,000 for that year. So I'm sure I can give you that figure, that chart if you like. No doubt council's got it, but if I did that sum over the next 10 years, it adds up to 144,000.
Mayor Brown?
Yeah, correct. Welcome, Fraser. And you did get a letter from me, and it was because of the enormity of the cost. It was to make it aware to all your residents up there, this is what was proposed, and it's the drinking water standards that are driving it, which we don't have any control over, but we have to adhere to. And to get your water up to the drinking water standards, we've got to spend $3.5 million or whatever. Yeah.
I know. Listen, like that legislation was come through Parliament about 15 years ago. All the councils have basically been sitting on their hands waiting for someone else to put a stick in the stand, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, and that day has come where it's still not, it hasn't been put in yet, but we're signalling that the drinking water standard says it has to go in, so preparing for it. Hopefully common sense will prevail by the time we get there, and I like your idea of the 1 unit per house.
Yeah,
Which
right,
would,
yeah.
it's common sense to do that, but the drinking water standard doesn't allow that to happen at this stage. So we won't be letting it rest at that,
Yeah.
but we've had to advise you of the worst case scenario.
I'm well aware of this, but maybe it's time councils went to the government and said, look, this is just far too hard.
I assure you we will, and hence you have submitting to us, telling us, so we've got some information that people aren't happy out there, which we can take to higher powers.
It's like I've mentioned here, I'd like the option of going off the scheme. Because, of course, if people go off the scheme, well, it makes it harder for those who are still on the scheme, aren't they? You know, it takes the rating base down, doesn't it?
As a matter of fact, if you went off the scheme, where would you get your drinking water from and stock water?
Well, firstly, it's my problem, but secondly, I can drill a well. I've only got a third of my farm is on the water scheme, so 2/3 of my farm's already been watered outside.
Well, the well.
No, there's creeks and springs and things like that. So yeah, we've got like for 144,000 over the next 10 years, I could look at my own source and water and
and don't disagree with you at all. Yeah.
And this is an issue that's actually happened in my district. We've got 4 dairy farms in my district now. My understanding is that they don't take any stock water because they're on the irrigation scheme, and we don't want them on the scheme because there's not enough water on the pipe to feed 1,000 cows here and 1,000 cows there. And some places are only taking house water. Well, I don't know if they've made submissions or not, but they're paying mega dollars for to do 6-8 houses.
Is there piped irrigation schemes around you up there?
It's creeping up. It's Mayfield Hinesville Edge scheme is creeping up. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so there could be alternatives coming, perhaps. Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt I'd like to say something.
And correctly so.
Had to make a submission. Yeah.
Great. We need that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I realise the government's driving it, but maybe the councils just need to say, look, we can't achieve drinking standards that Auckland or Wellington or Christchurch have got because we just don't have the rating base to do it. That plant, with the amount of water that goes through that 3.5 million plant, you could probably do half of Ashburton because 95% of it is drunk by stock. That's just it. That's what I think.
Thank you, Fraser, for your submission, and after deliberations, we'll get back to you.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you. Lyle Mulligan. And Lyle's submission is on page 423. Lyle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the time. I guess you're all pretty bored with a lot of the stuff that gets put in front of you. But I'm quite passionate about this. The quality of our water in the North East Ashburton area is appalling. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think there's a solution at the end of all this that we could work
Excuse
towards.
me?
Yep.
Could we just have no noise in the back blocks, please?
Sorry.
Not worrying me. Okay, should our community have to put up with a local industry polluting our drinking water in the process of making a profit? How long do we have to wait for a solution? For over 20 years, the North East Ashburton area has been subjected to the results of over-application of nitrates and E. coli-rich effluent being irrigated 6 days a week, rain or shine, onto a limited area of land. This has led to downstream bore users in our area finding elevated nitrates, often way above maximum allowable value, and often with E. coli in their drinking water. In August 2000, Environment Canterbury began monitoring of groundwater in the vicinity of the Ashburton Meat Processors disposal area. They focused on the area approximately 2 kilometres down gradient of the disposal area. The survey revealed a plume of nitrate contamination approximately half a kilometre wide and 2 kilometres long, extending southeast from the disposal area. Now, I think there's a map that the Mayor may have. Did Tony give you a map? It shows the plume area, and you may wish to share it, I'm not sure, but it's as I say, it's 2k wide, 2k long and half a k wide. Within this plume, nitrate concentrations exceeded the maximum allowable value for drinking water in many wells. The World Health recommendation is no higher than 11.3 nitrogen concentration. Because of this, ECAN decided in 2004 to review the AMP consent discharge to land. The key aim of the review was to reduce nitrates in the plume to below the MAV. That was what they set out to do. It was a publicly notified review, and a local community group called NERAG, North East Ashburton Residents Action Group, was set up to gauge opinion and submit for the community. And there were other local submitters as well. I submitted as an individual as well. NERAG submitted, amongst other things, that AMP supply an alternative source of potable water to any downstream user who had nitrate concentrations above MAV. Also, that there were more stringent limits on nitrates allowed to be irrigated. No effluent applications in heavy rain events, or when ground temperatures were below 6 degrees, or when soil water holding capacity was met. I mean, this is what dairy farmers, they have rules around their effluent and nitrates exactly like this. But none of these mitigations were accepted into the new consent of 2004, much to our disappointment, and we were sceptical then. Industry overcame community. The community was also concerned that resale values of their properties would be affected by the degradation of the water. Few limits were put on AMP. They are allowed a gross application of 400 kilograms of nitrate and effluent via irrigation per hectare per year. No stock to be grazed, all grass grown to be cut and carried off the property. That's to mitigate the nitrogen, the grass and hay grown would be taken away. ECAN and the commissioners assured us that the measures taken would see an improvement in our downstream wells. My well tests, which you have, I think you might have them, I think you may be the only one, okay, from 2000 to 2004, gave me little to be concerned about. If you look at them, you can see that apart from an elevated 9.8 in August 2000, the average of nitrates is 7.05. Move on to 2019. I hadn't tested my water since then, believing everything would be improving and that ECAN would be communicating if there was any problem with our groundwater. They're not very good communicators. They have 3 groundwater consent monitoring wells associated with AMP's consent. However, in 2019, I was hosting a wedding with 150 guests and thought, maybe I should test my water, just to be sure it was okay. I was shocked to say that the least, it was 11.7 milligrams above the MAV. I tested again thinking it was an anomaly, but the next result was worse, 11.9. I immediately contacted ECAN to find out what was happening and was told by them to contact AMP and lay a complaint. My complaint was logged and ECAN immediately began another testing regime on my well and other surrounding wells. AMP was once again the culprit, as testing in the original plume area revealed high nitrates. Some testing was done outside the plume area, for instance on Company Road Northeast, and those results were considerably lower. AMP has admitted they cannot do much more to mitigate the effects of their effluent applications. They have employed a company, Lowe & Associates, to help find areas that they can improve. As a result, they've installed bigger machines that are better able to remove blood and waste from the killing floor and instigated a tighter regime for the irrigating of the effluent. Over 2 years have passed, and in that time, AMP has paid to test my water on a monthly basis. You can see the results. The average nitrates have increased from 7.05 to 10.96. That's nearly 11, just under the MAV. And back in 2004 was 7.05. So the aim was to reduce the nitrates, but it hasn't happened. And I have increasing E. coli events. I don't think most in this community are really aware of the degradation of their drinking water and are unaware of the dangers. How many are actually testing their water as recommended by Crown Public Health? I cannot trust my water, so I have to buy drinking water. Why do I have to pay for my neighbour's pollution? I was pleased to read in The Guardian on the 14th of the 5th, 2019, that the health and welfare of the people of the Ashburton district is becoming a higher priority for the Ashburton District Council after the passing of the Local Government Community Wellbeing Bill. Bring it on. So, to protect our health and welfare for our community, I urge you please to consider these two actions you should take. Please connect AMP to the new upgraded wastewater pipe via Bridge Street so they may divert their wastewater to protect the environment and to ensure North East Ashburton is a better place to live for the future generations. Please pipe potable town water supply to all residents within the Plume area to provide safe drinking water, because the effects of the pollution will take some time to diminish. And as an aside, AMP employ 150 people, and it's an important industry for our town, and it's struggling to find a solution to its wastewater problem. So that's what I would like you to do, to look closely at connecting them to the wastewater to preserve the environment. And it's quite a densely populated area out there in the northeast. And you've changed the plan. We're no longer just 1 hectare blocks, we're able to subdivide. So people are trying to subdivide, but they can't get water. You know, you can put down, well, it's expensive. My well has just gone dry, so it's cost me nearly 19,000 to get. So what are we going to do? It's a big ask of local people who are on shallow wells and could get good water, and it's being degraded. In the 20 years since they did the testing, it's still degrading. So, the end of my submission. Any questions?
Thank you, Lowell. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Long. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I've got the same at my place and on the other side of the bridge.
Yep.
So I don't know where it's coming from. But are you able to connect to the town supply? Because I thought all that part on where you're living,
No,
the water pipes there, or not?
I cannot.
Okay.
I did request, because I noticed that the meat processors had a change to their consent in 2014, and I couldn't believe it. But the consenting officer had asked a number of questions which were printed as part of the consent. And that actually said in their submission for a change in the consent that if any person downstream was affected by any changes to their consent, they could be connected to potable water as it was handy on Company Road. But when I asked the question of the council, they said they knew nothing about that.
Mr. Mayor?
Thanks for your submission, Noel. You've just put your well down deeper. So how many metres were you before and how many metres deep are you now?
I was 20 metres and I've gone down to 36.
Have you tested the water at 36 metres?
It's being tested now. So I've gone down from, I think it started at 8.1, it's now down to 7.4 for nitrates. And I have had 2 Escherichia coli, not E. coli. I've had some of the other in one test. But it's settling down. It was only put down 2 months ago.
Right, okay. Yeah. And when I submitted to ECAN on behalf of the council, I raised that they look at their resource consents in the northeast and do their monitoring as they should. And it was raised at the submission. Yeah.
Thank you. I saw that in the paper. I was really grateful that you've taken it on board. That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, is it possible for you to give us an indication of how many people may or may not want potable water out there if we offered it again. If we offered it, sorry.
Oh, no, I couldn't give you an indication like that. I haven't gone round
I was just asking.
asking people.
Because we have to, if we're going to...
In the part, there was that question asked in 2004, but the community then was focused on finding out who was causing the problem, and they didn't want the district council to plaster over it by giving potable water and then saying, well, it's all sorted.
Yeah, cool.
We were concerned about the environment, and I still am, and it is there, but also people's health. Yeah, it's important. But I can't tell you how many, yeah.
Thank you, Lau, for your presentation, backed up with empirical evidence. Very good, thank you. And we will be back to you after deliberations.
Thank you very much.
The next submitter is Murray Johnston, and he is on page 309, and we might be in similar vein.
I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to speak. It's on reticulation water on Smithfield Road. You've probably seen my submission. To give you a comparison, about 5 years ago we were made residential from Tringy Road down to, on the south side, down to Scott's Boundary. To give you a comparison, the property over the road from me at 55 Smithfield Road, I'm 70, 1.349 hectares, capital value of 660,000, zone 9D. They pay $1,744.48 rates per annum. I'm at 70 Smithfield Road, inside the residential, land area 1.2355 hectares, capital value of 670,000, zone 9A. My rates are 2406.64. When they changed us to residential, I came and seen the council, and I spoke to someone in the administration, and I was told it was to bring us into line with the residential rating system. And I just said to him, that's not the question I asked, and he just snapped at me, so I won't tell you what I said, and I walked out. I would like to see the reticulation watered down, even if it's just to service the residential area. 5 years is a long time to be residential, paying $662.16 more than the neighbour over the road and getting nothing for it. Absolutely nothing. And I think it's time the council looked at the reticulation water down, even if it's only for the residential area. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray. Do any councillors have any questions? Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Murray, would other people on your road, do you think they would want reticulated water as well?
There's two that I know I've put submissions in,
Yep.
but we haven't approached anybody down there.
Okay, no, that's okay.
They tried a number of years ago to get, when all the nitrates were high, to put water in that northeastern section,
Yep.
and they all had a meeting and it was turned away. But they made a big mistake as far as I'm concerned. They should have put the water in.
Mr. Mayor?
If the water did go down there, Murray, would you be happy to pay for the capital cost of getting it down there, or not?
If it went onto the rates, but I feel we've been paying $662 for the last 5 years plus for nothing. So when you multiply 662 by 5, it's quite a bit.
You won't have wastewater service either?
So?
You don't have the wastewater service down there?
No, we've got nothing.
Yep.
Absolutely nothing. All we've got is Tarsiel Road.
Thanks.
Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you. So when you were made residential, apart from the words, and you've paid another $600, were there any other benefits? Did you get the rubbish collection or anything? Or
No, that we all come in the rubbish at the same time.
So you paid the extra but had no physical benefit?
I think from memory the letter that we got was where rate increase was, I thought mine was 478, but I was talking to Trevor and Scott, and theirs was 454 increase to bring us into line with the residential rating system.
But there was actually no betterment to the service?
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Murray.
Sorry, clarification. You did have the rubbish added on?
Yeah, but everybody has. We got at the same time as Lakewood and all the rest of the...
Yeah. And that's
They all
what's
come in,
for,
the
it's
bins full.
$300, is it? $400 something a year. Was it? Couple of years, 3 years ago now. Yeah. Yeah. Before that. But thanks.
Councillor
Wilson?
Just
Yes,
one other
see.
thing. I went for a tiki tour this morning. There's reticulation water on, from what I can see, the tow boxes on Murdoch's Road, Glassworks Road, North Park Road and half of Tate's Road. And they're all rural residential, I think, the 9D. So I could understand why they would have it and we wouldn't.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think what has happened is you've gone from residential D to residential C, so that anybody on your side of the road can subdivide to a small block. And I'm sure if you and your neighbours apply to be connected, as the Mayor says, the council will give you a quote and you will, if you're all agreeable, we'll run a pipe down there if you're prepared to help pay for it.
According to the thing, we're actually residential 9A. Now, I googled 55 Bridge Street just for an argument, and they are 9A, the same as us. And there's no water down our road at all. It stops at Trangie Road.
Mayor Brown?
Yeah, I know why those streets you mentioned have water out there because it's on the way to the industrial estate. So the pipes were laid there,
Yeah.
and those people out there had the opportunity to connect into those pipes because it was going straight past out to the industrial estate.
If it goes down the industrial estate, it doesn't go down Glassworks Road and down, I understand it went to the airport to get it down, was it
Yeah.
North Park, was it, or Murdoch's, North Park, the one getting down to the airport?
Yeah.
I understand it went to the airport.
And I know Tate's Road was extended a couple of years ago, might be more than that now, but there was some of the people out there asked for it to be extended to them.
Okay.
So it was put in and they paid for it.
Yeah.
And now they're on the water. And exactly the same thing could happen down the Smithfield Road that you're talking about. So, but we'll talk to you about that.
Okay. When you say pay for it, does it just go onto your rates as an increase in your rates? Okay.
There might be a capital up front or yeah, not sure. We'll have to come back to you on that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Murray.
Okay, thank
And
you
after
very much.
deliberations, we'll come back to you.
Thank you very much.
Our next presenter is Robin Pretty, and his submission is on page 469. Robin, the floor is yours, and I think you're presenting us to a problem or a solution that I haven't heard from since the early 70s.
Mr. Chairman, gentlemen and councillors, my submission is the state of the Ashburton River. During the summer months, the flow in the Ashburton River is now very low, and the situation is getting worse every year. The main cause of the low river flow is the change in the weather patterns. A few years ago in the 50s and to the 90s, there were frequent nor'west winds which in the summer brought rain to the catchment area and in the winter snow to the mountains. The weather patterns have changed now and there are fewer nor'west weather patterns. Also, with warmer winters, there's less snow on the mountains. The change in the weather patterns has led to a much lower rainfall in the foothills. Also, one only has to look at the mountains most of the year to see there's not much snow on them. Just as an aside, I grew up in Windwhistle, which was aptly named. In those days, you couldn't have, when I was a kiddie, you could never ever have thought of having a golf course over there because if you teed off, you'd have to go to Hororata to get the golf ball. So in my lifetime, I've experienced this change in weather patterns very much. The Ashburton River catchment area is in the foothills along with Canterbury, but not in the main divide. So it is very subjected to reasonable rainfall reaching the foothills. Back in the 1880s, the landholder of Lake Heron Station decided that by digging a channel from Lake Heron to the west, he could drain the lake into a tributary of the Rakaar River. This channel was dug and since then has been enlarged and is now quite a large stream. That's called Lake Stream. By putting in this channel, he was able to lower the lake 1 or 2 metres, and by doing so brought in several hundred hectares of swampland into good pasture and wintering country. Today, only in flood conditions does Lake Huron ever overflow into its old course. And my submission is as follows. Firstly, if you open up the old Lake Huron drainage channel, which goes east down through to Smith Stream, which joins up with the south branch of the Ashburton River, this could be done comparatively easily with modern equipment. Initially, you may have to use sandbags or something like to stop the water flow going out through Lake Stream. However, if the system proved satisfactory, then I would recommend that control gates be used and the flow of water could be established at the western outlet and also at the eastern outlet, so you could control how much water went down towards the Ashburton River. This way, when water is short in the Ashburton River, the gates on the eastern side of Lake Huron could be opened, and on other occasions when water is not needed in the Ashburton River, the western gates could be opened, and these gates could be remotely controlled. Future thought should be given to raising Lake Huron and perhaps Lake Clearwater as well, by say about 1/2 metre in the spring for use in the summer to augment the flow when needed. Also, perhaps lowering the lakes also by about 1/2 metre as well, and that would give 1 metre worth of storage in both those two lakes. As I say, Lake Clearwater, as it is, discharges into the Ashburton River. If nothing is done in the next few years' time, we will see the Ashburton River dry up at State Highway 1 bridge during the summer months. It very nearly did this year. And this will have a very serious effect on not only the wildlife that live at Hackatree, but also fishing and other recreational activities. The Ashburton River has a very, very important role in recharging the aquiflows as well. Most years now, the north branch of the Ashburton River is dry at Digby's Bridge. It is very important that this council instigate Environment Canterbury to do a feasibility study on the situation and also costings on it. And then, in association with Environment Canterbury, the council could get this work done, and the sooner the better. Doing nothing is going to result in the Ashburton River drying up during many summer months. If this happens, it's going to have a very bad environmental impact on the river and the area around it. It will also affect the recharging of aquiflows as well. Has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to, I like your plan, but there's a lot of consents that will be needed, and I guess it's all on dockland and ecan land, and I'm just thinking, yeah, where does council fit into this, but have you submitted to ecan on their long-term plan going forward to looking at the solution?
It's going to need a sort of joint tacking on this, because ecan Canterbury certainly are going to be very much involved with it, and then, as you say, the consents are going to have to be got. It's something that unfortunately can't be just done tomorrow. It's a long-term plan, but I think that it's very necessary that we do use the water, and there's a lot of water goes out in Lake Stream. I went up there when this river was just about dry at Christmas time, and I was staggered how much water was going out through Lake Stream. If that water had been coming down through the Ashburton River, we would have had a flow about equivalent to what there is there now. Actually, the flow in the Ashburton River right now is only 2 streams, one each side of the river, and that's pretty poor at this time of year.
Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pretty, naturalness, the natural character of the area up there, are you putting it to us, if I've got this right, you're putting it to us that the natural character is what it was before this farmer put the channel in. Am I correct?
Before the channel was, Lake Stream was put in, the channel at Lake Stream was put in, the Lake Huron flowed out to the eastern side and went into Smith Stream, and that was the natural flow. If any of you go up there for a picnic or something, there's a road that goes, the fisher folk take, it's quite a bit of a road that turns off the right just before you get to Aerosmith Station, and you go round the bottom end of the lake, and there's a car park just about where the outlet of the lake was, and it's only just a short walk to see and you can see there exactly how it used to work. You can see the old river contours.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. I was thinking the same thing what Councillor Mackay did. What is the level difference in between the 2 outlets? Would you know that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So there was a natural outlet, and they did another one in the 1880s. So what's the difference in the levels?
Yeah, well, in the 1880s, the landholder got dug into Lake Stream and to meet the Conway River tributary, which goes into the Ricard, and the Ricard doesn't need the water, but we do. And basically, it's putting it back to where nature had it.
Yeah, my question is, what is the difference in levels? So how deep did he have to dig to get it to the Ricard side?
Well, originally the lake was quite a bit higher than it is now.
Yeah, yes.
You can see, if you walk around and have a bit of a look up there, you can actually see where the original lake level was. It was up between 1 and 2 metres higher than it is now.
Thank you.
Mayor Brown?
Thank you. Thank you, Robin, for your submission. So if it went back the way it was, because it drained 200 hectares of land, you would flood 200 hectares of land again?
You'd have to be careful that you wouldn't want to raise the lake back up to flood that land that has already been drained. That's good pasture land. It's absolutely essential for the farmers up there. So the maximum I think you could raise the lake would be only about half a metre, but there's no reason why I couldn't go another half metre down below its standard level at the moment. And then you'd have a metre of water then that you could use. And I think also the same thing should be looked at Lake Clearwater. And but between the 2 lakes, if you had a metre of water, there's quite a significant amount of water.
And you'd use your floodgate system to control how much water went into the lake?
Yes, control. I think it needs, my personal view is it needs control gates on it so you can actually control how much water comes down, and when you don't want the water down in the Ashburton River, you shut the gate off and turn the water back into the Ricard.
Thanks.
Councillor Mackay?
I've got a tricky one for you, Mr. Chairman. I took it that it was inferred that agree with Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay has made no suggestion whatsoever. He actually only asked a question about naturalness. I don't want it inferred that I was in agreement. If that's all right. I listened very carefully to a comment made by a councillor. I want that put right out. I was
Thank
only
you.
asking a question.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Robin, for your submission. I remember a quote from Doug Hood way back in the early 70s where he said, give him a few hours, a D8 and a Euclid scraper, and he'd fix the problem for all time. I don't think the county council at that stage wanted to get involved in high country politics. But thank you, Robin, for a very good submission. Our next submitter is Cynthia Young, and she is on page 636. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Council. Getting to this point, and footpath and curving on Restless Road is fabulous. 6 years ago, I applied to Council for togetherness and outside our house, and I was told to try again. So here I am. This area has doubled in people and traffic, and the size of the vehicles are getting bigger and bigger, and it is in a great position to multiply with people and happenings. Footpath and curving will put 2 to 3 metres of width on our road, because at the moment and for 7 years I have mowed out the front, and you can step it out and you know there is 2 to 3 metres of roading will be added, which will make users feel safer. With the speed limit now down to 50 k's, this will save lives and beautify the end of Lockleigh. The size of vehicles are growing, so 2021 will be a year to remember. Please, we would like it done in 2021.
Thank you, Cynthia. Do any councillors have any questions? Mayor Brown?
Just in your submission on page 636, Cynthia, you talk about HRV filters. Did you want to tell us about that or not?
HRV filters?
Yeah, in your submission you talk about that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Underwater. We've had HRV filters for years at our cost for our health, you say?
Oh, that was in water.
Yeah,
That was our water.
Nothing further to add on that.
We've had HRV water for 6 years, and it's beautiful water compared with the town supply.
What's HRV?
HRV is a company.
Okay.
We've got HRV air too, and it takes all the pollution out of our house.
Cool. Thanks.
Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cynthia, on the side of the road that you're talking about between Charlesworth and Allen Street, if one wanted to buy a section to build a house on, is it possible, or is the infill almost complete?
What street are you talking about?
Charlesworth, along
Charlesworth
Great
Drive.
Racecourse Road. From
There's none
Charlesworth.
left. There's no sections left.
So it's totally infilled with houses now, and there's still no formal path and guttering.
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you, and thank you for your submission. I think we will win with your street. I hope we do, and in our following the road speeds consultation and then the walking cycling strategy, I think between Councillor Lovett and I, we've managed to get it moved up the list considerably from where it was, and that's
Thank you.
priority order. So
Thank you.
hopefully we will see it. It may not be 2021,
Well done, Diane.
but it did get moved up the list.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Cynthia, for
Thank
your
you.
submission.
Cool.
We know it's hard for you, but you've done it very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is Mary Ralston, and Mary's submission is on page 494. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I know you've had a long day, so I'll try to be succinct. I'd like to make 3 points. Firstly, about biodiversity. And firstly, I would like to support the comments made earlier today by Forest and Bird and the Ashburton Community Conservation Trust regarding increasing ADC's biodiversity capacity. The appointment of a biodiversity officer is well overdue. This person could oversee the biodiversity working group and manage projects such as the restoration of Wakanui and the control of conifers at Lake Camp. This has been undertaken in a part-time capacity by planner Bert Hoffmans, whose work has been greatly appreciated in this role. However, more time needs to be allocated to the biodiversity role, and ecological expertise is crucial within Council. Advice on biodiversity also needs to be available to other departments of Council, such as planning and roading. We have seen loss of valuable vegetation remnants due to roadwork, and in the planning, monitoring and compliance department, there seems to be a lack of awareness of native biodiversity and its value within an agricultural landscape. The biodiversity officer could also be responsible for advising on and simplifying the rules on native vegetation clearance, particularly in rural C, where there are exemptions to the requirement for a resource consent for vegetation removal. The conditions allow for incremental native vegetation destruction, which is still vegetation loss, but over a longer time frame. It is difficult for the public to know whether the vegetation clearance they see is legal or not. The process must be more transparent so that the public can have confidence that biodiversity is valued in Ashburton District. The biodiversity officer would also be responsible for identifying significant natural areas, which would be a requirement of territorial authorities when the National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity comes into force. This process will require ecological expertise the Council currently does not have. In addition to a well-resourced biodiversity officer, there is also an urgent need for Council to make a financial commitment for the purchase and management of reserves for Indigenous biodiversity. I'm sure you are all well aware of the value and importance of the Harris Reserve. However, this reserve is highly vulnerable to fire and vandalism. We must have other insurance reserves that are planted with the unique dryland species of the Ashburton District. Some potential sites have already been identified. Management of these sites will require an ongoing financial commitment. My second point is about climate change. Areas of Indigenous vegetation have great value for carbon sequestration and the mitigation of climate change. Native plants may take longer to capture carbon than conifers, but in the long run they are a better permanent option and also contribute to biodiversity goals. Exotic forests have a role to play in carbon sequestration, but ADC must be careful to ensure exotic tree planting does not replace native vegetation in the hill and high country or occur in sensitive catchments or on sites with potential for wilding spread. Water. I would like to see ADC support the National Policy Statement on fresh water and Council support for a minimum flow in the Ashburton River of 10 cumecs at the State Highway 1 bridge. In conclusion, I'd like to say our district thrives economically on the basis of its bounty of natural resources: water, soil, climate, and native biodiversity. We have an environment-based economy, not an agriculture-based economy. This precious environment needs greater attention and care than it has received over the last few decades of rapid agricultural intensification. A significant commitment from ADC to biodiversity and fresh water would be a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your discussion. Brad.
Thanks, Mary, for your submission. Just on the water and on the page I'm looking at, you talk, it must be acknowledged that agricultural intensification is the major contributor to the situation, and changing to farming practices must be made. Have you any suggestions on what those farming practice change could be?
Well, a lowering in the stocking rate on dairy farms and a phasing out of soluble nitrogen fertiliser. Both of those things would contribute significantly to a lowering of nitrate leaching.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. And you talked about 10 cumex in the Ashburton River. Did you just hear the previous speaker who talked about the change at Lake Huron and that possibly could be achieved? You must have heard?
I heard
yeah.
bits of it, yes.
Any comment on that?
Well, I think that's a very radical suggestion that is not really, cannot really be taken seriously from the point of view of maintaining naturalness of Lake Huron, the whole Ashburton Lakes Basin. And there are other ways to raise the level of the Ashburton River by reducing or imposing minimum flows on irrigation abstraction.
They're there now. But just about the naturalness, what the speaker said previously is that's what used to happen 100 or more years ago. It's putting it back the way it was.
Well, I don't know that that's true, actually. But I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but I would think that perhaps would need a bit of investigation.
Okay. Okay, thanks for your comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mary. Your comments about the over-allocated Ashburton River, actually ECAN are in the process of calling in all consents, and a lot of irrigators are going to have a substantial reduction in the amount of water that they can underground or surface, virtually no surface water, so you can look forward to a better flow in the Ashburton. Whether we can get 10 cumex, it's questionable if there's actually enough water. See, at the moment we couldn't get 10 cusecs because there's not enough rain.
Yes, I appreciate that a lot of irrigation consents have been called in, but the minimum flow, the new minimum flow is 6 cumex, I believe, but the long-term goal of the zone implementation plan was 10 cumex at a later date.
That's right.
So I'm hoping that Ashburton District Council would keep that in mind and work towards that goal along with ECAN.
Mary, thank you for coming along and speaking to your submission.
Thank you very much.
And we'll get back to you after our deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next submitter is Donna Favell, and you'll find Donna's submission on page 195. Donna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll just get the technology working, hopefully. Just I might have to. Gosh, how do you find the normal F-drive? Yeah, F-drive on mine.
Mel. How do you find it?
Tony's going to sort us out. Sorry, Tony. Excellent. So which one's mine?
So this should be.
Thank you so much.
No, you're right.
Sorry to be a pest.
Is that one of which one?
Yeah, it's that one there.
That should open it.
Okay, so. Excellent. Thank you. Sorry I made that hard work. Kia ora, Ashburton District Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to submit, and I do apologise on the briefness of my written submission. Like many others in the district, COVID has had an impact and we are short-staffed, so I do apologise for that. However, I have put some more effort into today's.
urban equity is the first thing I've written about, and that is to the point that I submitted on public conveniences on the east side. When I submitted to the walking and cycling strategy, I referred to a lack of public conveniences, recreational spaces and amenities, footpaths and lighting, and I'm just taking the opportunity to reiterate that. I didn't see a response, so I'm not sure if it was included. When I joined council as an elected member in 2010, Councillor John Ledley introduced me to a phrase called fairity, which is an amalgamation of both fairness and equity. I'm requesting urban infrastructure fairity for the east side of Ashburton. Having been an East Ashburton resident for some 25 years, I reiterate that East Ashburton needs recreational space and public conveniences and improved infrastructure. In response to these needs, it seems council is offering a second urban bridge. To my first bullet point, I wish those advocating for funds every success in securing 80% funding. The Provincial Growth Fund report for ratepayers. Is it correct that ADC have received their second report on the second urban bridge with funding used from the Provincial Growth Fund? And when will that be accessible to the ratepayers? I do not support the current preferred location. With recent calls to revisit the location, I wish to state my personal position as opposed to the Chalmers Avenue location. I've heard it said that if council was to go back to the drawing board and start the process again, it may add another 16 years to the process. My response to that is I would prefer a 16-year delay now to assess the optimal location as opposed to a lifetime of a bridge in the wrong location. Or to quote Harold S. Kushner, there is no right way to do the wrong thing. My optometrist has advised that I am blessed with hyperopia, also known as long-sightedness. And looking toward the future, I ask the Ashburton District Council to consider two strategies. The first is an arts and culture strategy. Councils have responsibilities under the Resource Management Act, the Historic Places Act, and the Local Government Act, to name but a few. I have tried to gather information from the 2020-21 annual plan on how much Ashburton District Council currently spends in the space of arts, culture and heritage. I could not clearly define where the museum budget was, whether it sits as part of recreation. I don't believe it's part of the Arts, Culture, Heritage grant. So I have guesstimated that somewhere between 2.5 million and 3.5 million is the current spend in this space. If we were to compound that in an average of 5% per annum, at 2.5 million, by 2030-31, we'll be looking at 4.1 million per annum. If, however, we compound the 3.5, we'll be looking at 5.8 million per annum. So why does Ashburton need an arts, culture and heritage strategy? Well, we have excellent venues and facilities, we have talented people, we have well-attended events. However, we have little collaboration, nor do we have a united vision. One thing you may not know about our business, the Regent Cinema, is that for 15 years, David and I have been the national after-hours number help desk for a national ticketing company for events called iTicket. So we have seen directly the attendance and benefits of arts, culture and heritage activities and what they bring to a community. Just a few examples where communities have benefited. Oamaru, with the introduction of steampunk, their Heritage Week. Napier, the Art Deco Festival. Arrowtown's Autumn Festival, Gore's Country Music Festival, Selwyn and their Selwyn Sounds, Hokitika Wild Food Festival and Driftwood Festival, Christchurch Buskers and Lantern Festival, Waiheke Island Jazz Festival and the New Zealand Pacifica Festival, which was recently held in Auckland. So why does Ashburton need an art strategy? To ensure that we maximise benefits to organisers and to the wider community. I recently heard the suggestion that the Ashburton district slogan could be Heart of the Mainland. Well, you can't spell heart, nor can you spell Ashburton without art. Something that the Ashburton Art Gallery cleverly identified when they designed their logo. As a member of the Canterbury Mayoral Forum from 2016 to 2019, I was given the portfolio of migrants and newcomers and became aware of the regional concerns in this space, and today I'd like to talk about the district opportunities. Ashburton has growing diversity. This morning, in preparation for today, I phoned Principal Ross Priest to better understand what that diversity looks like in the Ashburton College role. You might be surprised to know that this year 60% of the pupils at Ashburton College are of European descent. 15% are Maori, 11.5 Pacifica, and 11.5 Philippines. Now, for those doing the math, there was 2%, which I've put up there in the other. So Principal Ross Priest has his finger on the pulse, forecasting the ethnic diversity and composition of future pupils. He's confident that minority groups are on an upward trajectory and continue to grow. Can I congratulate Ashburton District Council on what they are currently doing? You are part of welcoming communities, of which I understand there are just 7 in New Zealand. You have been accredited. You are a refugee resettlement location, of which there are 13 councils. And Ashburton is represented on the National Multicultural Council Committee, which has 23 membership councils, by the Hakateri Multicultural Council. I'd also like to congratulate Council on its recent work with the Pacifica community. I know that it is greatly appreciated out there. However, as a district, I believe we have a responsibility to do more when the face of Ashburton is changing so quickly. One example I saw in this space that I was highly impressed with was the Christchurch Multicultural Strategy. That strategy was developed in 2017 to 2020, in 2016 for the 17 to 21 period. From that strategy came an implementation plan which is regularly reported on back to council and community. And I'd just like to read for you, I hope you can see that, the goals. The first goal was that Christchurch City Council is an inclusive and diverse organisation that reflects, understands and responds to the diversity of the individuals and communities it serves. The second is that all communities have equitable access to council services and resources. And in my note I wrote nudge, nudge, wink, wink, East Ashburton at that point. The third is that all residents are able to participate in council decision making. And the fourth is that Otautahi Christchurch is a city of cultural vibrancy, diversity, inclusion and connection. Again, councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to submit, and I wish you all the very best in your deliberations.
Thank you, Donna, for your submission.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions? And I see one from Councillor Lowe.
The multicultural strategy and its goals, do you think that may be something the welcoming communities in the multicultural society we've got here could put together without creating another identity?
I wouldn't recommend that another identity is required. I think the purpose of a strategy is purely to show leadership from a council, talk to the community, gather the information, but I would hope that another organisation was not required and that there are adequate organisations out there.
Thank you, Donna, and there's no need to apologise for the written thing. That was excellent, thank you. My question, I appreciate the time on the arts, culture and heritage strategy, which I think is an outstanding suggestion. But my question is around the public conveniences and other infrastructural things on the east side of town. Do you have a proposal where they would go? Like, have you discussed with people on the east side of town where things need to be?
Thank you for the question, and can I say that when I came last time, Councillor Brahm kindly asked the question on whether I thought, I think it was Devon Park was the correct location.
Okay.
Sorry. He asked that question and I said yes, and when I left the meeting, I reflected on that and I would prefer a new park, a new location with new facilities. However, in the absence of any, I thought it was a good interim solution. So to your question, where do I think it should go? I think the entire east side seems to be lacking in some basic infrastructure that is represented well on the west. We are all citizens of Ashburton, we are all paying urban rates, yet we have different levels of service.
I have a supplementary question. So with regards to basic infrastructure, you're talking about public toilets?
Yes.
What else? Parks and things or?
So I live on a street that still has above ground power lines, still have pebble stone footpaths, we still have some deep gutters. I know that council is spending a lot of time with the relief sewer down Chalmers Avenue, so thank you for that. But in regards to recreational facilities, I note that after I did my submission last time, I saw in the paper that a couple of elected members went to the inaugural Pacifica event, which was hosted at Hampstead All Sports Grounds, which is fantastic, but it did highlight the lack of council facilities over there. A couple of weeks after that, I went to a function at Hampstead All Sports Grounds, and a new resident to the east side said to me, I have moved to the poor side of town. Well, no resident should have to think that, but it's a sentiment that I also heard at the Ashburton Intermediate when the discussion was being had about the second bridge.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Donna, for your submission. Very well put.
Thank you.
And you know the usual process from here.
I appreciate the time, Councillor Fillane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last presenter in this session is Polly Hill, and you will find Polly's submission on page 273. Polly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I've got Paul with me as well. I guess I just wanted to talk to you guys today about the submission for funding that I put in, and just have a general discussion about what you guys think and any questions that you might have.
Me, Brian?
Thanks, Polly. Last time you talked to us, which was last year or the year before?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, we took that on board and listened. But if I recall correctly, you said all you wanted was a place to play disc golf.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't cost us anything. Yet today you're asking for $15,000 to put some things down. What's been the change?
So I've had discussions with people from the council who have advised, when I talked to them about funding and where to go and what the best idea was, I was directed towards applying on this long-term plan for funding as well. I've also approached businesses and I've had some success with them. There's 3 that I've got that are on board at this stage to help with funding. So I'm definitely looking elsewhere as well. But yeah, I guess just following directions as well.
So if you didn't get $15,000 from us, it wouldn't be the end of the world for you?
Well, I just have to work extra hard to, you know, get the rest, yeah.
But you do know that we've got an area set aside for you to set up?
Yes, yeah.
You do, yeah.
Yep, and I've designed a course.
You designed a course.
Yeah, it's all good to go. I just need the funding to finish it off.
Yeah.
And then we can, move along.
How much, I think it's in there somewhere. I read it
Yeah.
the other day, I can't remember.
It's 25 to
25
get the
all
whole
up.
thing done, yeah.
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 Yep.
But, you know, I have been in discussions with other businesses who have said that they could help with materials which would possibly lower the overall cost, so, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's okay.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Polly. Good to see you back.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased you found another place because the domain was not really the best place
Yeah.
we found.
Yeah.
So you're quite happy with the position where you are now?
Yeah, yeah, and as long as you guys are happy, then I'm happy.
Bring it on.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
It's a very suitable park, yeah.
Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you, and well done to get to this point. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to playing disc golf, but my comment was, and it may be Councillor Macmillan to answer it, but there's this new funding available for new events in our district, and I wondered whether you were aware of that.
Not really.
And whether Liz is able to partially answer that. Whether you'd be eligible to apply is what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. For the new...
Thank you. And the event funding is for actual events. So I don't think this would be eligible. But I also thought that Polly would have been directed to our grants funding as well. So yeah. I also think it's great. I think the location's really excellent.
Yeah.
So it'll be up to us to discuss in deliberations, I suppose, tomorrow about that funding.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a councillor, what argument can you give me that I can use to say to the ratepayers why they should fund your hobby?
Because it's a accessible activity that doesn't cost a lot of money. The disc hire would be $5. To buy a disc outright would be $20. And that's a one-off purchase. You can make it as competitive as you want, as social as you want. You can do it with your family, you can do it with your friends, you can have competitions there. It's something that I've seen all ages enjoy, and I've seen the area around where disc golf courses are improve because there's so much positive activity going on. So that's probably what I'd say.
Yes, if I may just add, the characteristics of disc golf as a recreation are, firstly, it's addictive, so it gets people playing. Most of the players in Christchurch don't play any other sport. Secondly, it's characterised by its range of motion. So practically every joint in the body is worked. This is quite unusual. It actually has very wide-ranging health benefits. It's good, for example, for rehabilitating injury. We get retired sports people playing. And also it's characterised by constant skill acquisition, which any physio or medico will tell you is very, very good and actually more important than mere fitness. So the community, so we in Christchurch, we're actually a charity because of the community benefits, of which the most important is health. It's not the only one.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my question is, will it be self-supporting once if we put 15 in, that your membership fees or attendances will cover it so that it's...
Yeah, the Christchurch Disc Golf Club will be in charge of maintaining it, and they'll come and attend to it once a month. So it won't be...
But the infrastructure is very robust, so you're talking about 20 years, it'll last 20 years. So there are no significant ongoing maintenance costs unless somebody nicks a basket or something, which we had one stolen in Christchurch, but that's a very unusual event.
And it's supplementary. Will people pay? Do you have a membership fee or?
No, they won't pay at all. They'll only pay a $5 fee if they want to hire the disc and a $20 fee if they want to buy it outright. So that's the only cost there.
Two questions. How many of these have been set up in New Zealand thus far?
Well, I'll take that. We're just going past 50 courses nationally in New Zealand, but it's very lopsided. Half of those are in the North Island, half of those in the South.
It's fair.
But we know, but you might be interested to know that 70% of New Zealand disc golfers are in the South Island. notwithstanding that we only have about 2/9 of the population. So that means on a per capita basis, more than 8 times the North Island. And the reason for that is very, very simple. It's because the South Island courses have, in the main, been put into residential suburbs. And the North Island courses have been put in outside towns and cities. They're what we call destination courses. And destination courses are lovely for people who already play, but they don't get any new players playing. Whereas if you put the courses into residential suburbs, like we've done in Christchurch or in Vicargill, then you get a massive influx of players. And also putting, a very important aspect of putting a course into a residential area, you get a much higher proportion of women and girls playing. So 2 years ago we had about 13% women and girls playing in Christchurch. It's now probably beyond a third. So we've nearly trebled the female participation rate, which is sort of holy grail to sports administrators.
Councillor Lawson?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Is there any provision for bike parking, car parking? How are people, not everybody will be able to walk. If people come out of town, where are they going to?
They can always park in the EA Network Centre car park because it's right next to the where the course is going to be. That's sort of my assumption.
Yes, there's ample parking at the main sports facility, but also along the side road. I think it's Smallbone Drive or whatever it's called. There's ample parking. The over the main road is all residential. That's one of the reasons we find the course such an attractive location. Yeah. It's very, we have a saying that all disc golf is local. If you don't put a disc golf in somewhere, people aren't going to travel long distances normally. Only the hardcore will do that. Yeah.
Thank you for your submission, and we'll be back into you in due course after going through deliberations.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Just as a close, I'd like to thank all members of the public for attending today, and just to let them know that we will be resuming again at 6:30 p.m. I'd like all councillors to stay, please.